Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching ships from dozens of different worlds dock at the massive space station. Some ships looked like giant crystals that glowed with soft blue light. Others were dark metal spheres covered in strange symbols. A few looked like they were made of living coral that pulsed with rainbow colors. 3 months ago, Jake had never seen an alien ship. Now he was humanity's representative to the Galactic Confederation, the alliance that governed most of the known galaxy. Earth had finally developed faster than light travel, and the aliens had welcomed them with open arms. "Captain Morrison, they are ready for you," said Dr. Alan Brooks, walking up behind him. Alan was a thin man with thick glasses who had learned to speak several alien languages in just a few weeks. His brain worked faster than most computers when it came to understanding new things. Jake nodded and followed Alan through the curved corridors of the station. The walls were made of some kind of metal that changed color as they walked, shifting from silver to gold to deep purple. The air smelled like flowers mixed with ozone, and Jake could hear the soft hum of alien machinery all around them. They entered a large circular room where Ambassador Zethkari was waiting. The alien was tall and thin, with green scales covering his body and large yellow eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His people, the Saurians, had been part of the Confederation for over 1,000 years. "Welcome, Captain Morrison," Zethkari said in perfect English, though his voice had a strange hissing quality. "I trust you have found our station comfortable?" "Very comfortable, thank you," Jake replied. He had learned that aliens appreciated politeness just as much as humans did. Commander Lisa Hayes was already sitting at the curved table that dominated the room. She was Earth's top expert on defense systems, a no-nonsense woman who had spent 20 years protecting Earth from asteroids and space debris. Her short brown hair was pulled back in a practical style, and she wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's Space Defense Force. "Shall we begin with the standard planetary assessment?" Zethkari asked, pulling up a holographic display that showed Earth floating in space. The blue and green planet looked small and fragile against the black background of space. "Of course," Jake said, settling into his chair. He had been through this process twice already with other alien representatives. It was supposed to be routine. Zethkari began scanning through data files about Earth. His long fingers moved across the holographic controls, and Jake could see numbers and charts appearing in the air above the table. The alien's expression remained neutral as he reviewed Earth's population, technology levels, and resource availability. Then Zethkari stopped. His large eyes blinked several times, and he looked at the display more carefully. "I believe there has been an error in our data collection," he said slowly. "What kind of error?" Lisa asked, leaning forward. "According to these readings, your planet has no shield generators," Zethkari said. "No orbital defense platforms. No energy barriers. Of any kind, this cannot be correct." Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. "The data is correct," Jake said. "Earth doesn't have energy shields." Zethkari's scales seemed to change color slightly, shifting from bright green to a duller shade. "But that is impossible. How do you protect your world from asteroid impacts, solar flares, hostile spacecraft?" "We have other methods," Lisa said calmly. "We've been protecting Earth for a very long time." The alien stood up abruptly, his tall frame towering over the humans. "Other methods? Captain Morrison, do you understand what you are saying? Every civilized world in the galaxy maintains massive shield arrays. The technology has existed for over 2,000 years. Without shields, your planet is completely defenseless." "We don't consider ourselves defenseless," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. The conversation was not going the way he had expected. Zethkari began pacing around the room, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. "This explains so much," he muttered. "How your species survived this long is truly remarkable. You must have been incredibly fortunate to avoid any serious threats." "Ambassador, I think you might be misunderstanding our situation," Dr. Brooks said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "Humans have faced many serious threats throughout our history. We've developed effective ways to deal with them." "Effective ways?" Zethkari stopped pacing and stared at the humans. "What could possibly be effective against a coordinated attack?" Against a solar storm? Against a large asteroid impact? Without shields, your entire civilization could be wiped out in minutes. Lisa stood up, her expression becoming more serious. We've been tracking and deflecting asteroids for over a century. We have early warning systems for solar activity. And as for coordinated attacks, well, that's never been a problem we've had to face. Because you have been isolated, Zethkari said. But now you are part of the Confederation. There are hostile species in the galaxy, Captain Morrison. The destroyer fleet has been attacking worlds for decades. Without proper defenses, Earth would be helpless against them. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was the first time anyone had mentioned hostile aliens. The destroyer fleet? A nomadic warrior species that travels from system to system, conquering planets and taking resources, Zethkari explained. They have destroyed dozens of worlds, but they have never succeeded in breaking through a properly shielded planet. Shields are the foundation of galactic defense doctrine. How do these shields work? Lisa asked. Zethkari waved his hand and the holographic display changed to show a planet surrounded by a shimmering blue barrier. Energy fields that surround the entire world. They can absorb massive amounts of damage and redirect energy attacks back into space. Most shields can withstand bombardment for weeks or even months, giving the inhabitants time to call for help or mount a counterattack. And you're saying every planet in the Confederation has these? Jake asked. Every civilized planet, Zethkari confirmed. The first thing any species does when they achieve space travel is build planetary shields. It is the most basic requirement for survival in the galaxy. Lisa studied the holographic display carefully. These shields cover the entire planet, of course. That is the only way to ensure complete protection. But what happens if the shields fail? Lisa asked. Zethkari's scales shifted color again, this time to a darker green. Then the planet is defenseless, which is why we build multiple backup systems and maintain them constantly. Shield failure is not an option. Jake could see where this conversation was heading, and he didn't like it. Ambassador, Earth has survived and thrived without these shields. Our methods may be different, but they work. Captain Morrison, I mean no disrespect, but you cannot compare random chance to proven technology, Zethkari said. Your species has been fortunate, nothing more. But fortune does not last forever. The alien turned to face all three humans. I am prepared to authorize immediate emergency assistance. We can have shield generators installed around Earth within 6 months. The Confederation will provide the technology at no cost as part of our standard new member protection package. That's very generous, Jake said, but we need to discuss this with our government first. There is nothing to discuss, Zethkari said firmly. This is not a matter of opinion. This is a matter of survival. Your planet is defenseless, and that puts not only Earth at risk, but potentially other Confederation worlds as well. Dr. Brooks cleared his throat. Ambassador, you mentioned that humanity has survived for thousands of years without shields. Doesn't that suggest our methods might be more effective than you think? Zethkari paused, considering the question. Dr. Brooks, with respect, surviving in isolation is very different from surviving in a galaxy full of hostile forces. Your species has never faced a real threat. When you do, you will understand why every other civilization relies on shields. The room fell silent for a moment. Jake could hear the soft hum of the station systems and the distant sounds of alien voices in the corridors outside. Finally, Lisa spoke. We appreciate your concern, Ambassador, but humans have been defending their planet successfully for a very long time. We might know more about defense than you think. Zethkari looked at her with what might have been pity. Commander Hayes, I have studied warfare for 3 centuries. I have seen planets burn and civilizations fall. Without shields, Earth is nothing more than a target waiting to be destroyed. Jake stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. We'll take your offer under consideration, Ambassador, but Earth will make its own decisions about defense. As they left the meeting room, Jake could feel Zethkari's eyes following them. The alien clearly thought humanity was making a terrible mistake, but Jake wasn't so sure. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters. They had always found a way to adapt and overcome. Maybe they knew something about defense that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. 3 months had passed since the meeting at New Geneva Station. Captain Jake Morrison was back on Earth, sitting in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was filled with screens showing star maps, ship movements, and communication channels from across the galaxy. General Pete Collins stood at the center of it all, a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been Earth's top military commander for 15 years, and Jake had never seen him look worried before. Today was different. "Show him the reports," General Collins said to Lieutenant Amy Foster, a young officer who had been monitoring alien communications for the past week. Amy pulled up a holographic display that showed a map of local space. Red dots marked the locations of attacked planets, and there were far too many of them. "It started 6 weeks ago," she explained. "A fleet of unknown ships began attacking Confederation worlds in the outer sectors." Jake studied the display. The red dots formed a rough line moving through space like a swarm of insects eating their way through a field of crops. "How many worlds?" 12 confirmed, Amy replied. All of them had full planetary shield systems. All of them fell within days of the first attack. General Collins activated another screen that showed intercepted alien communications. The voices were translated into English, but Jake could hear the fear even through the mechanical translation. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Kepler 7. Our shields are failing. Repeat, planetary shields are failing. We need immediate assistance. This is Tau Ceti Defense Command. Shield generators overloading. We cannot hold much longer. Where is the relief fleet? Alpha Centauri B to all stations. The shields are down. They're coming through. Tell our families we tried to." The transmission cut to static. Jake felt a cold weight in his stomach. "Who's doing this?" "The destroyer fleet," General Collins said. "We've been getting reports from Confederation intelligence. They're a nomadic warrior species that travels from system to system. They have one strategy, and it works perfectly every time." Amy brought up another display showing the attack pattern. They surround a planet and bombard the shields with everything they have. Constant fire from hundreds of ships. The shield generators can't handle that much energy for very long. Once the shields fail, the planet is defenseless. "How long do the shields usually last?" Jake asked. "Anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks, depending on the size of the generators," Amy replied. "But they all fail eventually. The destroyer fleet is patient. They just keep shooting until the barriers collapse." General Collins walked over to a large screen that showed Earth from space. The blue and green planet looked peaceful, with white clouds swirling across the continents. "Long-range sensors picked up the destroyer fleet yesterday. They're heading this way." Jake stared at the screen. "How long do we have?" 6 days, maybe 7, General Collins said. "The Confederation has already sent evacuation ships. They'll be here in 4 days to start moving our population to safety." "Evacuation?" Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "We're just going to abandon Earth?" "What choice do we have?" Amy asked. "Every shielded world in their path has fallen. We don't even have shields. The aliens think we'll last maybe 6 hours once the attack begins." Jake looked around the command center. Dozens of officers and technicians were working at their stations tracking the approaching enemy fleet. None of them looked like they were preparing to run away. "What does Earth Command think about this evacuation plan?" Jake asked. "General." Collins smiled for the first time since Jake had arrived. "Earth Command thinks the aliens are about to learn something new about human defense strategies. We're really going to fight them?" "Captain Morrison, humanity has been fighting superior enemies for thousands of years," General Collins said. "We've faced armies with better weapons, better armor, and better training. We've always found a way to win." Amy pulled up a new display showing Earth's defense assets. Jake was surprised to see how many ships and installations were marked on the screen. "I thought we only had a few dozen military vessels." "Official military vessels. Yes," General Collins said. "But take a look at this." The display changed to show every spacecraft in Earth's solar system. Cargo ships, mining vessels, research stations, orbital platforms, and civilian transports were all marked in different colors. There were thousands of them. Every single one of those ships and stations has been equipped with military-grade weapons. Over the past 3 months, General Collins explained, Mining ships have plasma cutters that can slice through armor. Cargo vessels can launch their containers like missiles. Research stations have sensor arrays that can track enemy movements from millions of miles away. Jake studied the display more carefully. The seemingly random distribution of civilian vessels suddenly looked like something else entirely. This is a defense network. The largest mobile defense network in known space, General Collins confirmed. While the aliens were building bigger shields, we were building a bigger army. Captain Roy Martinez entered the command center still wearing his flight suit. He was commander of the Earth vessel Defiant, one of humanity's fastest ships. General, we just finished the patrol sweep. The destroyer fleet is maintaining their standard approach pattern. They're not expecting any resistance until they reach planetary orbit. Perfect, General Collins said. How do they usually begin their attacks? According to Confederation records, they jump into a system and immediately move toward the target planet, Roy explained. They ignore everything else and focus all their firepower on breaking through the shields. Amy brought up tactical information about the destroyer fleet. Their ships are heavily armed but not very maneuverable. They're designed for sustained bombardment, not space combat. Most of their weapons are long-range energy cannons. Weapons designed to break through shields, General Collins noted. But what happens when there are no shields to break through? Jake was beginning to understand. They'll be fighting an enemy they're not prepared for. Exactly. Every battle they've ever fought has been the same. Surround the planet, shoot at the shields until they fail, then move in for the kill. They've never had to deal with an enemy that shoots back from the very beginning. Lieutenant Foster looked up from her station. General, we're receiving a transmission from the Confederation fleet. Ambassador Zeth Kari wants to speak with you. Put him through, General Collins said. The main screen flickered, and the familiar face of the Saurian ambassador appeared. His green scales looked darker than usual, and his large yellow eyes were wide with concern. General Collins, I am pleased to see you are preparing for evacuation, Zeth Kari said. The refugee ships will arrive soon. We can save most of your population if we begin the transfer immediately. Thank you for the offer, Ambassador, but we won't be needing evacuation assistance, General Collins replied calmly. Zeth Kari's scales changed color, shifting to a lighter green. General, I do not think you understand the situation. The destroyer fleet has conquered 12 shielded worlds. Earth has no shields at all. Your planet cannot possibly survive their attack. We have our own defensive methods, General Collins said. What defensive methods could possibly work against an enemy that has broken through shields designed to withstand weeks of bombardment? Zeth Kari asked. General Collins looked at Jake, then at the officers around the command center. Ambassador, has the destroyer fleet ever fought an enemy that didn't rely on shields? What do you mean? Every world they've attacked has used the same strategy. Hide behind energy barriers and hope the shields hold long enough for help to arrive. But what if there were no shields? What if the enemy came out to meet them? Zeth Kari was quiet for a long moment. General, space combat doctrine has been established for over 1,000 years. Planetary shields are the foundation of all defensive strategy. Without them, any planet is helpless. Maybe, General Collins said, or maybe the rest of the galaxy forgot how to fight while they were hiding behind their shields. This is madness, Zeth Kari said. You will all be killed. Ambassador, humanity has never learned how to hide, General Collins replied. We've always believed that the best defense is a good offense. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Jake looked at the star map showing the approaching destroyer fleet. Are we really going to attack them? We're going to do what humans have always done when faced with a superior enemy, General Collins said. We're going to fight smart, fight dirty, and fight to win. Amy Foster looked up from her station. General, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the destroyer fleet. They'll be here in 6 days. Then we'd better get ready, General Collins said. Activate Protocol 7. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you attack a planet full of humans who refuse to surrender. Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched the officers around him spring into action. The destroyer fleet might have superior numbers and firepower, but they had never fought an enemy like humanity. They were about to learn that some planets didn't need shields to protect themselves. They had something much more dangerous. They had humans who were willing to fight. The destroyer fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, near the orbit of Pluto. High Commander Vortex stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tactical display with satisfaction. The small, blue planet in the distance looked exactly like all the others he had conquered. "Begin standard attack formation," Vortex commanded. His voice was deep and rough, like grinding stone. The destroyers were a warrior race that had been conquering worlds for centuries. They were tall, muscular beings with thick gray skin and small red eyes that glowed in the dark. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the system," reported Sub-Commander Krikstal, his tactical officer. "There are thousands of small vessels scattered between here and the target planet." Vortex barely glanced at the sensor. Readings. "Civilian ships fleeing the system. Ignore them and proceed to the planet. We begin bombardment as soon as we reach optimal range." But as the destroyer fleet moved deeper into the solar system, something unexpected happened. The small civilian ships didn't run away. Instead, they began moving toward the destroyer fleet. Major Chris Webber sat in the cockpit of his fighter, Ghost 1, hidden in the shadow of a large asteroid near Jupiter. Around him, 11 other ships from Ghost Squadron waited silently. They had been drifting with engines off for 2 days, waiting for this moment. "Ghost leader to all units," Chris whispered into his radio. "Enemy fleet is in position. Begin Phase 1. Across the solar system, hundreds of human ships began their attack, but they didn't charge straight at the enemy like the destroyers expected. Instead, they struck from all directions at once, hitting the outer edges of the fleet and then disappearing back into the darkness of space. On the bridge of Vortex flagship, alarms began ringing. "Sir, we're under attack," Krikstal shouted. "Multiple small craft attacking our rear guard." "Impossible," Vortex growled. "This planet has no military. Continue to the target." But the attacks kept coming. Human fighters would appear from behind asteroids, fire their weapons at destroyer ships, and then vanish before the enemy could respond. Mining vessels would launch their cargo containers like missiles, then use their plasma cutters to slice through enemy armor before retreating into the asteroid belt. Captain Roy Martinez commanded a group of converted cargo ships that had been hiding near Mars. His ships looked harmless from the outside, but each one carried enough firepower to destroy a cruiser. "Remember, hit and run," Roy told his pilots. "Don't try to fight them head-on. We're not trying to win battles. We're trying to make them bleed." The destroyer fleet had never faced this kind of warfare before. They were used to enemies that stood still and fought honorably. Their massive ships were designed to pound planetary shields with sustained fire, not to chase fast-moving targets through debris fields. Dr. Nina Clark sat in the command center on Earth, explaining the battle to a group of alien observers who had remained to watch Earth's destruction. The aliens couldn't understand what they were seeing. "Your ships are running away from battle," complained Ambassador Zethkari. "This is not how space combat is conducted." "They're not running away," Dr. Clark explained patiently. "They're using guerrilla warfare tactics. Humans perfected this kind of fighting thousands of years ago, when we had to fight enemies with better weapons and armor." "But this is dishonorable," protested another alien observer. "Warriors should face each other in open battle." Dr. Clark pulled up historical files on her computer. When the ancient Greeks fought the Persian Empire, they were outnumbered 10-1. When native tribes fought against colonial armies, they faced superior weapons and training. When resistance fighters fought against occupying forces, they had almost no resources, but they all found ways to win. On the tactical display, she showed how human ships were using the same strategies that had worked on Earth for millennia. They avoided direct confrontation, struck at supply lines, and used the environment to their advantage. The destroyer fleet expects their enemies to hide on their planets and wait to be attacked, Dr. Clark continued. But humans learned long ago that if you can't take a hit, You get very good at not getting hit. Major Weber's Ghost Squadron struck again, this time targeting one of the destroyer fleet's command ships. They came in fast and low, using the gravity of Jupiter to accelerate their attack. The enemy ship tried to turn its heavy weapons toward them, but the fighters were too small and too fast. Ghost 2, target their communication array. Weber ordered. Ghost 3 and 4 hit their engine cooling systems. Everyone else keep them busy. The attack lasted less than 3 minutes, but when it was over, the command ship was drifting helplessly with its engines offline and its communications dead. Ghost Squadron disappeared back into the asteroid belt before the other destroyer ships could respond. High Commander Vortek was becoming angry. His fleet had been under constant attack for 6 hours, and they had barely moved closer to their target planet. Every time his ships tried to maintain formation, human vessels would appear and force them to break apart to chase the attackers. Why won't they fight properly? Vortek demanded. Cowards, stand and face us like warriors. Sir, we've lost 17 ships to these hit-and-run attacks, Krixtal reported. Our formation is scattered across half the system. Maybe we should consolidate our forces. No. Vortek slammed his fist on the command console. We are the destroyer fleet. We do not retreat from inferior opponents. But the human attacks were taking their toll. Captain Sophie Lee commanded a group of stealth reconnaissance ships that had been tracking every move the destroyer fleet made. Her ships were small and fast, designed for gathering information rather than fighting. But they carried the most important weapon in the human arsenal: knowledge. Command, this is Recon 7, Sophie reported. The enemy is getting frustrated. They're breaking formation to chase our attack groups. Their flagship is isolated from the main fleet. General Collins received the report in Earth's command center. Perfect. Send word to Strike Group Alpha. It's time for Phase 2. Strike Group Alpha consisted of 12 heavy cruisers that had been disguised as civilian freighters. They had been drifting slowly through the outer system, looking exactly like refugee ships trying to escape the battle. The destroyer fleet had ignored them completely. Now the fake freighters revealed their true nature. Their cargo bays opened to reveal missile launchers and energy cannons. Their civilian hulls fell away to show military armor underneath. In seconds, they transformed from helpless refugees into deadly warships. The disguised cruisers struck at the isolated destroyer flagship with everything they had. Vortek's ship was caught completely off guard, its shields down and its weapons pointing in the wrong direction. Impossible! Vortek roared as his ship shook under the bombardment. Where did these warships come from? The attack on the flagship forced the rest of the destroyer fleet to change course and come to their commander's aid. But as soon as they moved to help Vortek, other human groups struck at the ships they left behind. Colonel Matt Johnson watched the battle from Earth's Strategic Planning Center. The walls were covered with displays showing the movements of every ship in the solar system. To an outside observer, the battle looked like chaos, but Johnson could see the pattern. Beautiful, he said to his aide. They're dancing to our tune now. Instead of moving toward Earth in formation, they're chasing shadows all over the system. The aide looked confused. Sir, shouldn't we be trying to drive them away from Earth? No, Johnson explained. We're doing something much better. We're making them forget why they came here in the first place. The destroyer fleet had attacked 12 planets using the same strategy every time. They would arrive in overwhelming numbers, surround the planet, and pound the shields until they failed. It was simple, effective, and had never failed before. But now they found themselves scattered across an entire solar system, chasing an enemy that refused to fight the way they expected. Instead of one big battle, they were fighting dozens of small battles all at the same time. High Commander Vortek realized too late what was happening. They're not trying to defeat us in battle, he told Krixtal. They're trying to wear us down. Sir, we've been fighting for 12 hours and we're still nowhere near the planet, Krixtal replied. Our fuel reserves are running low, and the crews are exhausted. Vortek looked at the tactical display. His fleet was spread out across millions of miles, chasing human ships that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. He had started the battle with over 300 ships. Now he could only account for 260. This is not how warfare is supposed to work, he muttered. But on Earth, General Collins was smiling. This is exactly how warfare is supposed to work, he told his staff. When you can't match the enemy's strength, you make them fight on your terms instead of theirs. The battle was far from over, but already the humans had proven something important. They had shown that shields weren't the only way to defend a planet. Sometimes the best defense was to never let the enemy get close enough to attack in the first place. Major Weber regrouped his squadron behind a cluster of asteroids. His pilots were tired, but victorious. They had been fighting for hours without losing a single ship. Ghost Leader to all units, HRA. The battle had been raging for 6 days, and High Commander Vortek was beginning to understand that something had gone terribly wrong. He stood in the damaged bridge of his flagship, staring at reports that made no sense. His mighty destroyer fleet, which had conquered 12 shielded worlds, was being torn apart by an enemy that shouldn't even exist. "Give me the status report," Vortek demanded, his red eyes glowing with anger. Sub-Commander Krikstal consulted his damaged displays. "We have lost 93 ships, sir. Another 47 are too damaged to continue fighting. Our fuel reserves are at 30% and the crews are exhausted." Vortek slammed his massive fist against the wall. "How is this possible? We outnumber them 10 to 1. "Sir, they are not fighting like any enemy we have faced before," Krikstal said carefully. "They refuse to engage our main fleet. Instead, they attack our supply ships, our scouts, and our damaged vessels. They know exactly where we are at all times, but we can never find them." On the other side of the solar system, Colonel Matt Johnson was putting the finishing touches on his masterpiece. The Human Command Center buzzed with activity as officers coordinated the most complex military operation in Earth's history. "Phase 3 is complete," reported Captain Sophie Lee, commander of the reconnaissance fleet. "The enemy has lost all tactical cohesion. Their ships are scattered from Jupiter to Mars, and their command structure is breaking down." Johnson studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The destroyer fleet looked like a swarm of angry insects, chasing human ships in all directions with no coordination or plan. "Excellent. Begin Phase 4. It's time to show them what happens when humans stop playing defense." Captain Roy Martinez received the new orders aboard his flagship, the converted cargo vessel Freedom. Around him, 50 other ships prepared for the most daring part of the human plan. "All ships, this is Strike Command," Roy announced over the radio. "We've been running and hiding for 6 days. Now it's time to hunt." The human ships had been carefully studying the destroyer fleet's movements, learning their patterns and weaknesses. Captain Sophie Lee's reconnaissance teams had identified which enemy ships were damaged, which ones were low on fuel, and which commanders were making poor decisions. "Target selection is complete," Sophie reported to Johnson. "The enemy flagship is isolated near Saturn. 3 heavy cruisers are protecting it, but they're all damaged from our previous attacks." "Perfect," Johnson replied. "Begin the final phase. Show them what humans learned from studying warfare for thousands of years." Major Chris Weber led the attack on the enemy flagship. But this time, Ghost Squadron wasn't alone. 50 human ships converged on Vortek's position from 6 different directions, using tactics that had been perfected in ancient battles on Earth. "This is how Alexander the Great defeated the Persian Empire," Weber told his pilots as they approached their target. "This is how Hannibal crossed the Alps to attack Rome. This is how every underdog in history learned to beat a superior enemy." The human ships moved like a pack of wolves hunting a large animal. They didn't attack all at once. Instead, they took turns striking at different parts of the enemy formation, forcing the destroyer ships to constantly turn and respond to new threats. "Enemy ship turning to port," called out Lieutenant Jenny Adams from Ghost 7, exposing their engine section. "Ghost 4 and 5, hit those engines now," Weber ordered. "Everyone else, keep them spinning." The destroyer ships were powerful, but they were designed for long-range bombardment, not close-quarters combat. Their heavy weapons couldn't track the fast-moving human fighters, and their thick armor was useless against enemies that struck at weak points and then disappeared. Vortek watched in horror as his flagship was slowly torn apart by an enemy. He couldn't even see clearly. "Where are they coming from?" he roared. "Our sensors show 50 ships, but they seem to be everywhere at once. They are using some kind of tactical coordination we have never encountered." Krixtal replied. Each ship knows exactly what the others are doing. They move like a single organism. Dr. Nina Clark was explaining the battle to the alien observers who had remained to witness Earth's defeat. But instead of watching a planet die, they were seeing a military revolution. The destroyer fleet fights like most galactic species, Dr. Clark explained as she showed historical examples on her computer. They rely on superior numbers and firepower. They expect their enemies to line up and trade shots until one side breaks. Ambassador Zethkari stared at the tactical display in amazement. But the human ships are everywhere at once. How do they coordinate so many different attacks? 2,000 years ago, a Chinese general named Sun Tzu wrote a book called The Art of War, Dr. Clark said. He taught that all warfare is based on deception. When you are strong, appear weak. When you are near, appear far. When you attack, appear somewhere else entirely. She pulled up examples of human military history, showing how smaller armies had defeated larger ones throughout the centuries. Humans learned that victory doesn't come from having the biggest army. It comes from making the enemy fight where and when you choose, not where and when they want to fight. The alien observers watched in fascination as human tactics that had been developed thousands of years ago proved effective against advanced spacefaring civilizations. Captain Roy Martinez led his strike group in a devastating attack on the destroyer fleet's remaining supply ships. Without supplies, the enemy fleet would be forced to retreat or fight while running out of fuel and ammunition. Target their supply convoy, Roy ordered. Those ships are the key to their entire operation. The supply ships were heavily defended, but the defenders were exhausted from 6 days of constant fighting. Human ships struck from multiple directions using the same tactics that ancient pirates had used to attack merchant convoys. Sir, the supply convoy is under attack, Krixtal reported to Vortek. If we lose those ships, we won't have enough fuel to reach the planet. Vortek faced an impossible choice. He could send ships to protect the supply convoy, but that would leave his flagship even more vulnerable. He could continue toward Earth, but his ships might run out of fuel before they arrived. This is not how warfare works, Vortek shouted. Enemies are supposed to defend their planets, not attack our supply lines. But Colonel Johnson had studied this exact situation many times in Earth's military academies. Every successful military commander in human history learned the same lesson, he told his staff. An army that can't eat can't fight. An army that can't move can't win. The human attacks were perfectly coordinated, but they looked completely random to the enemy. Ships would appear, strike hard at a specific target, and then vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The destroyer fleet was fighting dozens of small battles instead of one large one, and they were losing all of them. Major Weber's squadron struck again, this time targeting the enemy flagship's communication systems. Cut off the head, and the body dies, he told his pilots, quoting another ancient military principle. Ghost leader to all units, Weber radioed. Hit their command center. Make it impossible for them to coordinate their remaining ships. The attack was swift and precise. Human fighters swarmed around the massive enemy flagship like insects attacking a giant animal. They struck at communication arrays, sensor clusters, and command nodes with surgical precision. Vortek's ship shuddered under the assault. Lights flickered on the bridge as critical systems failed one by one. Sir, we've lost contact with 60% of the fleet, Krixtal reported. Our long-range communications are down. How many ships do we have left? Vortek asked. Krixtal checked his instruments, but half of them were no longer working. I'm not sure, sir. Maybe 150. Maybe less. Vortek realized that his fleet was no longer a fighting force. It was a collection of damaged, scattered ships with no coordination and no clear mission. The humans had turned his strength against him, using his own size and power to make him vulnerable. Sir, what are your orders? Krixtal asked. For the first time in his long military career, High Commander Vortek had no answer. He had conquered worlds across the galaxy using the same tactics that had worked for centuries. But now he faced an enemy that had turned warfare into an art form, and he had no idea how to respond. The humans had proven that shields weren't the only way to defend a planet. They had shown that sometimes the best defense was to attack so cleverly that the enemy never got a chance to use their superior strength. Captain Sophie Lee's reconnaissance ships reported the final piece of intelligence that Colonel Johnson had been waiting for. "Sir, the enemy flagship is isolated and damaged. Their fleet is scattered and confused. They have no idea where our main force is located." Johnson smiled as he prepared to give the order for the final phase of Earth's defense. "Then it's time to show them where we've been hiding all along." High Commander Vortek made his final desperate decision on the 8th day of battle. His mighty destroyer fleet had been reduced to fewer than 100 ships, scattered and damaged across Earth's solar system. His pride would not let him retreat, and his anger demanded revenge against the humans who had humiliated him. "All remaining ships converge on the target planet," Vortek commanded through the few communication channels still working. "We end this now. Prepare for direct assault on the surface." Sub-Commander Krickstall looked at his commander with concern. "Sir, we have no intelligence about the planet's surface defenses. Shouldn't we probe their capabilities first?" "They have no defenses," Vortek roared. "They told us themselves. No shields, no orbital platforms, nothing. We will show them what happens when they dare to fight the destroyer fleet." Admiral Frank Torres watched the enemy fleet's final approach from Earth's primary command center, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, thousands of officers and technicians monitored every aspect of the planet's defense network. The Admiral was a calm man with gray hair and steady hands, the kind of leader who got quieter as situations became more dangerous. "Sir, the remaining enemy ships are moving into final attack position," reported Captain Jake Morrison, who had been coordinating with alien observers throughout the battle. "They'll be in visual range of Earth in 6 hours." "Perfect," Admiral Torres said quietly. "Send the signal to all stations. Activate Defense Protocol 0. Across Earth and throughout the solar system, a transformation began that would change galactic warfare forever. On every continent, in every ocean, and on every orbital installation, hidden systems came to life. Dr. Lisa Reynolds stood in the observation deck of Luna Base, Earth's moon-based research station. She had been explaining human defensive philosophy to alien observers for 8 days, and now they were about to see the final lesson. "Ambassador Zethkari, you asked us repeatedly why Earth has no shields," Dr. Reynolds said to the Saurian diplomat. "The answer is simple. We never needed them." "But your planet is completely exposed," Zethkari protested. "Any enemy can attack your surface directly." Dr. Reynolds smiled as she pointed toward Earth, which hung like a blue jewel in the darkness of space. "That's exactly what we want them to think." High Commander Vortek's remaining ships approached Earth in a ragged formation, their crews exhausted and their commander desperate for victory. The planet grew larger in their view screens, looking exactly as vulnerable as it had when they first arrived. "No shields detected," reported the tactical officer on Vortek's flagship. "No energy barriers, no defensive satellites, no orbital platforms. The planet appears completely defenseless." "Begin bombardment," Vortek ordered. "Target the largest population centers first." But as the destroyer fleet moved within weapons range of Earth, something extraordinary happened. The planet's surface suddenly erupted with defensive fire. From hidden installations in mountains, deserts, and ocean floors, massive energy cannons emerged and opened fire. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as space debris revealed their true nature as heavily armed battle stations. Asteroids that had been floating peacefully in Earth's neighborhood suddenly sprouted weapons and began launching missiles. "Impossible!" Vortek shouted as his ships came under devastating attack from directions they had never expected. "Where did all these defenses come from?" Captain Jake Morrison was broadcasting the battle on emergency channels to every alien civilization in the galaxy, making sure they all witnessed what was happening. For those watching from other worlds, this is Earth's true defensive capability. What you're seeing is not shields. What you're seeing is a planet that turned itself into a weapon. The destroyer fleet found themselves caught in a killing field, unlike anything they had ever encountered. Instead of a single energy barrier that they could focus their fire upon, they faced thousands of individual weapons platforms scattered across an entire world. Dr. Reynolds continued her explanation to the stunned alien observers. You see, Ambassador, humans learned something very important during our long history of warfare. Walls can be broken, barriers can be overcome, but it's very hard to destroy an enemy that's everywhere at once. Every major city on Earth was protected by concealed defensive installations. Every mountain range hid weapons capable of reaching into space. Every ocean contained submarines armed with surface-to-space missiles. Even civilian structures like office buildings and shopping centers revealed hidden weapon systems. This is what humans call defense in depth, Dr. Reynolds explained. Instead of putting all our protection in one place where it can be targeted and destroyed, we spread it everywhere. To attack Earth effectively, an enemy would have to destroy the entire planet. The destroyer fleet's tactical situation became hopeless within minutes. They were designed to overwhelm single targets with concentrated firepower, but Earth's defenses were not concentrated. They were everywhere. Admiral Torres watched the battle from his command center with quiet satisfaction. This is why we never built planetary shields, he told his staff. Shields protect what's behind them, but they also limit what's behind them. We chose to be unlimited. High Commander Vortex flagship shuddered under the coordinated fire from dozens of Earth's weapons platforms. His shields designed to protect against energy weapons were failing under the barrage of kinetic missiles, plasma bolts, and exotic energy beams. Sir, we cannot survive this level of fire, Krixtal reported. We must retreat immediately. But Vortex pride would not let him accept defeat. We are the destroyer fleet. We have conquered civilizations across the galaxy. We will not be defeated by a planet of primitives. Captain Roy Martinez led the final human assault from his position near Mars. His converted cargo ships had been waiting for this moment, when the enemy fleet would be pinned against Earth's defenses with nowhere to run. All ships, this is Strike Command, Roy announced. The enemy is trapped between our forces and Earth's defensive grid. Time to finish this. The remaining human ships attacked the destroyer fleet from behind, catching them in a crossfire between space-based weapons and planetary defenses. It was the same tactic that human armies had used for thousands of years. Fix the enemy in place, then attack from an unexpected direction. Vortex realized too late that he had fallen into a trap that had been 8 days in the making. The humans had never been defending their planet randomly. Every attack, every retreat, every seemingly desperate move had been designed to bring the destroyer fleet to this exact position. They planned this, he whispered, as his ship's systems failed around him. All of it. From the very beginning. Dr. Reynolds addressed the galaxy through the communication channels that were broadcasting the battle. To all civilizations watching this engagement, please understand what you have witnessed. Earth was never defenseless. We simply chose to defend ourselves in a way that your military doctrine could not recognize or counter. The last of the destroyer. Fleet's ships were systematically destroyed by Earth's coordinated defenses. Some tried to flee, but human pursuit ships were waiting at every escape route. Others tried to fight, but they were overwhelmed by weapons firing from every direction. High Commander Vortex flagship was the last to fall. As his ship broke apart around him, he finally understood what had happened. They were never hiding, he said to Krixtal. They were hunting. Admiral Torres opened a communication channel to the galaxy as the battle ended. This is Admiral Frank Torres of Earth Defense Command, addressing all members of the Galactic Confederation. The threat to Earth has been eliminated. Our planet remains secure. Ambassador Zethkari stared at the tactical display in amazement. The destroyer fleet, which had conquered 12 shielded worlds, had been completely destroyed by a planet that supposedly had no defenses at all. How? Was all he could manage to say. Dr. Reynolds answered him with a quote from an ancient human military philosopher. The supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. But when you must fight, fight from a position of strength that your enemy cannot see or understand. Captain Jake Morrison took over the communication to address the galaxy. For 8 days you watched Earth defend itself against an enemy that had defeated worlds protected by energy shields. You saw a planet with no barriers, no walls, and no hiding places. You called us defenseless. He paused as images of the destroyed, Destroyer fleet filled the communication channels. You were wrong. Earth was never defenseless. We were something much more dangerous. We were patient, we were prepared, and we were everywhere our enemies least expected us to be. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves throughout the Galactic Confederation. Military academies across dozens of worlds began studying human tactics. The concept of distributed defense became a new field of strategic studies. But perhaps most importantly, no one ever again made the mistake of assuming that a world without shields was a world without defenses. Earth had proven that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that looks completely harmless until it's too late to retreat. And sometimes the best way to protect your home is not to build walls around it, but to make sure that anyone who threatens it regrets their decision. The Galaxy learned a new definition of the